I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to dye some wool roving with some leftover dyes to leave no dye behind. I have some acid dyes mixed with citric acid that I want to use up. These colors are Dharma acid dyes in True Black, Alpine Blue, and I think Cayenne Red. I think that's the color. And I thought it would be fun to set up an immersion bath with this Knit Picks Wool of the Andes roving and just kind of see what kind of colors we create. Things are going to spread out a lot. I don't think we're going to end up with a speckled colorway, but I think we can end up with something really fun and beautiful. So I'm excited! Now, if you want to learn more about any of the tools or equipment that I use in my videos, I do have affiliate links in the video description to the items that I'm using, which means I may earn a commission if you make a purchase through those links. But now let's go pre-soak our roving. And we're gonna pre-soak our fiber directly in the container that we want to use to dye it. And I'm gonna sort of lay out the fiber the way that I want it. Just so it's slightly more organized, even though we're gonna be, I think, well, depending on what the colors do, fairly random, but who knows? Maybe the colors will speak to me and we'll do something a little more repeating. But let's get some water. Here I have 8 cups of plain tap water. I think I might want more because I want there to be a lot of water in here, so that way when the dyes hit the fiber, they'll spread. I kind of want it to hit water first. And so I'm debating going all the way up to 16 cups of water. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and add 3 tablespoons of white vinegar to our soak. As I mentioned, there is citric acid mixed in with the acid dyes we're going to be using already, and so that will bring acid in here. But we do want there to be acid as well, just because I do want the colors to strike. Now this roving is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. It is not superwash, and so as I'm pressing it in, I am trying very, very hard to not rub or agitate it because I don't want to do that. But I'm especially pushing on these drier patches because I want the fiber to get saturated. And you can see where it's starting to feel a little more translucent. That is wet. I'm bringing over 4 more cups of water, which is gonna bring us up to 12. And the nice thing also is that the more water we have, the more our fiber won't be compressed. So here we've got fiber at the bottom and on the surface, which means that there is space, there's less resist in there for colors to travel through. But we also have some air bubbles in here, which is why I continue to press. And I think we'll let this sit for around 30 minutes, just so that way I can get as saturated as possible. So I will see you in about 30 minutes. It's definitely been more than 30 minutes, and I would say that our fiber is very well saturated. And with the 12 some cups of water, you can see that I can press down and almost get my fingers completely underwater. But when I lift up, our fiber is still at the surface. The question is, do I add more water? You know what? Let's go for it. Let's heat it and add our dyes a little bit, and then we'll decide. So this catering steam pan is on top 2 burners on my stovetop. This is a 4-inch deep full-size catering steam pan. And so I have the heat a little bit high just to start getting it heated up, but we're gonna wait till things are steamy. I will keep a close eye on it because we don't want too much agitation in there, because we don't want anything to felt. No felting today, not allowed. But I'm curious to see if I'm going to enjoy like adding the speckles and letting that color spread, or if I'm going to want to bring a spoon in to work that color through more. We're going to let these dyes and colors speak to us. So once everything is hot, I'm going to go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so we can start dyeing this fiber. Here are the leftover dye powders. We have a lot of the black. Only a little bit of the Alpine Blue, and then we have a fair amount of that red as well. And I would say of these, the blue and black had a more dye to citric acid ratio, and the red had a little bit less dye.
because when I was using it before, I was trying to get the red a lot more spread out and just a subtle hint in my project. But you'll see as we add a lot of it, we'll get more payoff. Let's play with our reds a little bit first. I'm bringing it on and I'm really just sprinkling it on top because I'm curious what is going to happen and how much this is going to spread. I have a feeling if we were going to use all of this on 100 grams of superwash yarn, we could end up with something medium saturated, but that is looking kind of fun and cool. Let's do some more right here. The one concern I have is that we could end up with color that is just on the surface of our fiber versus something that is going through more. But look at the way that these dyes are sort of sinking into the fiber. It feels almost like fireworks because you have them and then you get these little streaks as the color sort of dissolves and spreads. Here's a section where it really does look like a little burst of color. And then after a little while, here's some of that dye that I added first. A lot of that color is very much reduced. And I mean, I'm going to be curious in a minute, but let's add more color to the top and then we'll worry about what's happening on the other side. Roving is very, very hard to flip. Okay, here is some black. And you can see how the way I'm adding it, we would be able to get speckles on something superwash. But it's amazing and a little mesmerizing to watch these just spread after I added them. Let me zoom you in someplace so that way you can really, really watch this. So there I'm adding those speckles and they're transitioning from little dots of color. I'll add more down there just so that way you could see and slowly spreading and sinking through. I think that if this dye or if this fiber was superwash, these colors might strike faster because we do have citric acid powder in here, but we also have vinegar in our dye bath. I'm going to reduce the heat a little more. So we're definitely getting some spread of these colors on our yarn. It's just how much spread, I don't know. I want to peek. Okay, some amount of color is going through to the other side. It's just, flipping roving is super, super hard. And we have a lot of dye, and I would like to use up a lot of it. But and I'm bringing the black everywhere now. But one other concern that I have as I'm doing this is that the more dye we add, the more citric acid I'm adding. So in theory, over time, colors could strike a little bit faster. Maybe. We don't know for sure, but what I'm hoping is that we aren't going to get the most even application of color. And so I'm hoping that a lot of this color will move through the fiber and that we'll get something that feels nice and mottled is my hope. But right now, it's looking very, very, very black. Now the color I have not brought in yet is our alpine blue. I'm going to try to bring some of that in. I have no idea if this will actually show up down around either end of our fiber. And so I tried to put some in a spot right there so maybe you could see a little bit of the blue. I'll zoom in after I finish this color. But I guess it doesn't have to be very repeating. Okay, we're going to be starting a shaking situation because I can't get my fingers on it very well anymore. But the nice thing about fiber is that you can choose how to spin it. So you get some choice over those repeats. If there are even color repeats. But seeing here, you can see a little bit of the blue. Now, the blue could break. It does have some yellows in it. So we could see something else a little bit beneath the surface. I am so curious about what's happening. So I'm going to bring my spoon. All right, I see some blue and black. All right. Is the red? The reds might be striking a little bit faster. But see, when I press down, the fact that I see so much, gray is telling me that there's a chance that this color is sinking towards the bottom. I just want to pick up and look. Yes, see, we do have color, and of course now that color is spreading. But it's okay if we have something that is more saturated there and more mottled over here. I think that that should all be fine. What I would like to do, we are, as I said, adding acid in with our just dyes. But I would like to add some vinegar, and it's okay if it's uneven. Just to have it. Now my goal is to use up as much of this dye as I can. But I'm going to try to leave some areas where I can add the red so we can see that a little more. Just like we can see the blue pretty well in areas. But we can still spread it out a little bit down there. Down here, okay. Let's save that last little bit of black. Bringing in our red. And I'm going to do the red maybe a little bit all over in some of these areas. But I do want some of it to sort of show through a little bit. And so that's why I'm going heavier on those areas that are more exposed. I feel like on camera you guys are a little bit overexposed right now, which is not a bad thing. It just means that to me everything looks darker than I think what you're seeing. And I'm just starting to sprinkle this on. This is definitely a project where I'm letting these colors talk to me. But imagine how this darkness with the red and blue, how that might spin and how it might play together. It's really fun. I think this is a little bit more accurate to what I'm seeing in person. I think it is very, very beautiful. I have a handful of black left. And I'm debating waiting, but I think, you know what, if we end up with white, I think that would, on the bottom, I think that could spin in really prettily as well. Not that I was going for something that's red, white, and blue, and black. That was not my goal, beyond just using up these dyes that I have. And I think that's it. I have officially tapped all of that dye that I had used. All of the liquid, all of the powdered dye is in our yarn. And if I take a sort of damp paper towel and wipe it along the edge, I see a little bit of color. I thought this was more wet than it is because I was using it to dry my hands. There's a little bit of color. Most of the color did land and was heavy enough to land on our fiber. I'm now going to cover this, and I did not make this long enough, with a little bit of tin foil just to trap some of the steam here in the pan.
Because I have the heat on low, things aren't that warm in here. I might turn up the heat a little bit for 60 seconds or something and then reduce it again. You can see some steam sort of curling out of the edge, but if most of the steam is sort of blocked into the fiber, then that'll help make the heat a little more evenly distributed and help set the color on our fiber. So And yep, once I hear bubbles, reducing it to low. I'm gonna go ahead and let this heat for 40 minutes, but I will come back and peek and check in on it just to make sure that things aren't gonna dry out. But I think we have plenty of water, plus with it covered, the steam will collect on the foil, condense, and potentially fall back down, which means that we're retaining that moisture. It's not escaping our system completely, even though it might a little bit on the edges, but that's fine. Okay, it's been about 40 minutes. I'm going to peel that off. Ooh, things are looking pretty dark. Oh, and the nice thing is our water is looking clear, and if I move things aside, I'm not seeing color come out. We don't know. Oh, there we are. We're seeing color come out over here. You know what? I'm gonna let it. Is that just happening along that edge? Maybe. It's possible that we had some powder that just didn't get enough water. I'm trying not to move things too much, but that seems to mostly be an edge issue versus an all over issue. Okay. I am going to turn off the heat, but I'm going to recover this and let things cool off really, really slowly. And we'll check and see if we need to add any more heat or anything, but I think that that last bit of color we saw should clear. Our roving is cool, and I'm living a little dangerously here, balancing this on the edge of my sink, plopping that in to some water, but I'm not seeing any dye left here in the pan. Maybe I see something like around the edge, the top edge where the fiber was, but so far, so good. And we got great color. I should have even just lifted up the fiber at one end first before putting it in, because I'm trying to have the water be like on an empty corner, because now I don't really know what's happening. So I'm gonna add like the tiniest hint, just on the tip of my finger, of some dish soap to here, because I don't want it to be hard to rinse out. And I'm trying to avoid too much agitation because I don't want to felt the fiber, and I think that the washing stage, especially if it's a fiber and a dye that requires a lot of rinsing, is the point where we're most likely to felt it. Because like right now, if I were to wring it out, that could cause some felting. So there's a hint of color that came out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fill the basin up all the way to the top. Whoops, overflowing a bit. And gently try to let this soak in. Yeah, and what's hard to say, I think there is a tiny bit of bleeding. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give this one more rinse. Then I'm going to put the yarn in, or the fiber, in my spin dryer to remove the excess water so it can dry a little bit faster. The bleeding is not severe. If it's there, it's just a hint. And so this is a situation where I would recommend, okay, once you have spun the yarn, then wash it more vigorously when you're setting the twist, if that makes some sense. Because, you know, I'm not really seeing too much of anything. But anyway, into the spin dryer, and I'll come back when we see our unfluffed fiber. What it looks like dry. Here is the fiber unfluffed. And, okay, I see a white patch here. Let's flip it. Overall, we got really good color penetration. And let's see, it is a little bit compressed, but it's gonna draft super easily still. And so sometimes with fiber, what I like to do, especially when there might be a little bit of twist in the roving itself, is I like to just go and fluff it a little bit before I take pictures. It makes it look a little bit prettier too. Now, this is something that I don't do when it's superwash fiber, because since this is non-superwash, the fibers will grip really well together. And if you pull a little off, you almost can like stick it back to itself. Whereas superwash yarn or fibers are a lot slipperier. And so this doesn't work quite as well. But I'm so happy with how this turned out. I mean, it's not speckled, but I didn't entirely anticipate speckles anyway. We ended up with really nice color saturation. Now I'm gonna braid this up. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I don't bring roving into my Leave No Dye Behinds nearly often enough. I need to dye more fiber in general, and yes, I've been saying this, I feel like, for the last 2 years. I would love to do more spinning content. I just have to carve time out for it, and I need to get it on the schedule in a sense so that way that doesn't keep getting like pushed off into the inevitable never. But I'm so happy. Are there any techniques you want to see me play around with when it comes to roving and other unspun fibers? Let me know down in the comments below. I don't carry a lot of roving in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop because the inventory in my shop is predominantly stuff that I dye in my videos and in my live streams. So if I'm not filming as much of it, then there isn't as much inventory for my shop. But there is still some unspun fiber that I've dyed in my shop, and so you should go and check that out. But if you don't spin, I also have hand-dyed yarn you can go and get, and it's a great way to help support the channel and everything all at the same time. Subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.